Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So I did it again. I just gone through 2 episodes and then realized that I hadn't hooked up the mic. I was so fucking pissed. So anyway, I am back on track and we're just going to make it work. It'll be fine. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't do anything this weekend. Let me clarify. I didn't do anything productive this weekend. It's been a long week. High emotions for everybody for a lot of different things. So I decided to take Saturday and Sunday off. Didn't record anything, didn't edit anything, just spent time at home with family, friends. Needed to unplug a little bit because we go at pretty much breakneck speed 24/7 around here. So needed a little bit of a break. We've fought very hard to never let this show get too political. And I'm not going to start now. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this last week, and all the episodes that I recorded last week I had recorded like in advance, kind of a batch. So the only thing that was like live-ish was the September 11th recording. And that was highly restrained. Like I had so many different emotions and feelings about stuff that I had to very, very, very purposely rein myself in. So if I sounded a little like kind of halted or not quite as fluid, it was because I really had to think very carefully what I said. EMS is not only an apolitical group, should be at least, but we see the worst. We see the most disgusting, horrific things that a human can see outside of going to war. I would say that's really the only thing that trumps what we see, what a lot of, like, say, homicide units see. We pretty much see it all. And you know, First Amendment's a wonderful thing because you're allowed to say what you want to say without fear of legal ramification. And that's an important thing to know because, yes, you have the right to say what you want to say, as do people who oppose you. We have caught a lot of flack over the last almost 2 years now for how we talk on this platform, for the language that we use. Sometimes people think it's a little crass, or some people complain about us talking about culture stuff and think we should just talk about cool calls and stuff like that. Well, that doesn't do anybody any good, really, because everybody's doing that. But when it comes to free speech, you have the freedom to say what you're going to say. Obviously, assuming that you're not committing slander, libel, that you are not outright inciting direct violence, and that you are not assaulting somebody. Because again, we learned this in EMT school: assault is verbal. It is putting someone in fear for their life, safety, and well-being. It is not you getting your feelings hurt. 2 different things. I'm possibly going to hurt some feelings, but I don't give a shit. Because the cost of free speech is free speech. You have a right to say what you want to say. I have a right to say what I want to in return. I find it unconscionable that there are first responders, people around here that I know, who were celebrating and or mocking the assassination this past week. We see so much death, so many awful things, and yet you stoop that low. And this has nothing to do with who was assassinated. It has nothing to do with that at all. Could have been anybody. Anybody. It doesn't matter. Celebrating that and or mocking it, a man who was brutally murdered in front of his wife and children. That is despicable behavior. And that is just my opinion. And that's okay, because this is a free country and I can express my opinion. I don't give a shit what your political views are. You don't know what mine are. You would actually be surprised at some of the things that I stand for and am okay with and believe in. Some things you wouldn't be surprised, but a lot of things you probably would be. But that's not the fucking point. We should not let other people's lifestyles, beliefs, what have you, interfere with our care. Now, there have been times over the years, and thankfully it's actually been fairly few and far between. I can't complain too much about this, but it has happened several notable times where I would be on a call and I was not doing what the patient wanted me to do for them, even though I was treating them appropriately according to protocol and in the best interest of the patient. And I got accused several times in those situations of being racist and a bunch of, various other things. To which my answer was, absolutely the fuck not. I'm going to nip this shit in the bud right now. Here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Period. The end. Has nothing to do with what you look like, has nothing to do with what you believe. Nothing. And that is a hill I will die on, because we are truly Switzerland, if you will. EMS is supposed to be, we don't put people in jail. And I'm not saying that in any way derogatory towards law enforcement at all. I'm not painting them any particular way. I love our officers. I think that law enforcement is essential to a functioning civil society, period, the end. No question. But we don't have to get involved to that degree of addressing the ethics and morality of a situation. Our job is to treat the patient. Period. The fucking end. I have treated and taken care of some very awful people. Awful, awful people. Criminals. Murderers. Plenty of other offenses that I could list that I'd rather not get banned on TikTok for. But my job was to take care of them because they were a human being who was on my stretcher who had some kind of complaint, and that was my job. If your view of the value of human life is dictated by someone's beliefs and just in general the words that they speak in good faith, cool, but you don't belong in healthcare. This is no different than back when people were saying that folks that didn't want to take the COVID vaccine were enemies. They were enemies of the public. It's no different than that. People who were saying that if you didn't get the COVID vaccine that you shouldn't get healthcare treatment. That was peddled around quite a bit. And yet the same people that said that are now doing this. And I'm not saying a political party, I'm saying in general, the same people, the same ultimate underlying belief systems about human life are doing the same thing. It's pretty fucking atrocious. Do fucking better. So, today, we are digging into law number 28, and that is enter action with boldness. If you are unsure of the course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold. No one honors the timid. When was the last time that you saw somebody who was just a very neutral, vanilla, non-aggressive person that was well respected and actually accomplished something in the world? It doesn't happen. There's an element of boldness that is required to bring about any change in the world. Now, there are limits to this, and that in the reversal here, he references a couple of the historical examples that he went into further detail on during the book. So the reversal is always at the end of the chapter. That's where some of the references come to in this section. But he says, boldness should never be the strategy behind all of your actions. It is a tactical instrument to be used at the right moment. Plan and think ahead and make the final element the bold move that will bring you success. In other words, since boldness is a learned response, it is also one you should learn to control and utilize at will. To go through life armed only with audacity would be tiring and also fatal. You would offend too many people, as is proven by those who cannot control their boldness. One such person was Lola Montez. Her audacity brought her triumphs and led to her seduction of the King of Bavaria. But since she could never rein in her boldness, it also led to her downfall. In Bavaria, in England, wherever she turned, it crossed the border between boldness and the appearance of cruelty, even insanity. Ivan the Terrible suffered the same fate. When the power of boldness brought him success, he stuck to it to the point where it became a lifelong pattern of violence and sadism. He lost the ability to tell when boldness was appropriate and when it was not. Timidity has no place in the realm of power. You will often benefit, however, by being able to feign it. At that point, of course, it is no longer timidity, but an offensive weapon. You are luring people in with your show of shyness, all the better to pounce on them boldly later. Why the fuck are we talking about this? In EMS culture, we are very much on the cusp of a cultural war, if you will. And I'm not talking about a physical war. I'm not talking about direct violence. What I'm talking about is we are in this standoff now. And really there's three parties in this. There's the quiet majority, I would say, or at least, they're pretty close to a majority, but they're not as outspoken, that actually do want to see positive change. I would argue that is a majority of people deep down. But you have that group. You have the ones that are actively opposed to positive change for whatever reason. Usually they're either in the good old boy system or they're so emotionally dysfunctional that they don't want to deal with their personal demons, so they would rather just be shitty human beings and make everybody else around them miserable. Well, then your third crowd is the people that are just apathetic. They just don't give a fuck. They're not invested. They don't care. They're not putting in any effort either way. Well, in that context, right now we're in kind of a standoff between all three, kind of the old school like Mexican standoff, where all three of you are pointing the gun at each other and can all damage each other all at the same time. The people who are the hardcore anti-positive change EMS are probably not going to have their minds changed. It is what it is. We can't change that. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with that. It's the ones who are apathetic that I have the most hope for, because that's where I was. I was very. I don't know that I would say full apathetic. There was definitely an element of that. I was exhausted, and I didn't know how to manage it. I didn't know how to handle my shit. So I empathize with people that are in that neutral space because they feel very disheartened by the old people who came before them, who basically told them, nothing's going to change. It's not worth it. And they've been in it just long enough that the people that are coming up and saying, hey, this isn't right, we need to fucking change this, don't really inspire them any. So they're in that kind of cross section that is very hard to reach. But I would say that we are very quickly approaching the point where we need to exercise some boldness in a measured way to effect change in EMS. And unfortunately, it's going to be kind of like a street fight because your standards, yes, ultimately drive who you are. But when you're jumped in a dark alley, you kind of have to do what you got to do to survive. And unfortunately, as conflicts emerge between the toxic good old boy system and the people coming up to say, hey, this isn't right, you're going to be in those situations where people are fighting dirty. The good old boy system will fight dirty. They have no qualms about it. They have no moral inhibitions about it. They may feign it, just like he's saying here. They may feign that timidity, but they don't actually give a fuck. So, what I would say is there's a time to be bold, to be outspoken, to challenge, and then there is a time to feign the timidity. Not because you're trying to be manipulative for manipulativeness' sake, but because you are in a tactical engagement. And it is strategically advantageous to be able to feign weakness, defeat, what have you, to lull your opponent. So we're not even saying victim, just your opponent. It's important to lure them into a sense of overconfidence and feel like they've won. And then you can rip it out from right underneath them. So use boldness as a tool. Pick your battles. I have harped on this and harped on this, and I will do so until the day I die. You have to pick your battles carefully, but when you do, go for it. Don't fucking stop. The persistent are the ones who survive. You know the old expression, fortune favors the bold. It's true. Fortune also favors the consistent. You can be bold, but if you don't have a long fuse, then it doesn't matter. You have to be able to be in this for the long haul. You have to be able to acknowledge that you don't know when this is going to end. Unfortunately, we're in a position now where people either need to get on the train or get off the tracks, because we need to move past where we are. Because if we don't adapt, if we don't grow, we're going to die. We are going to keep suffering, and our patients are going to suffer as a result of it. That's not fair for anybody. So if you want to see change in EMS, now is the time to be bold. Now is the time for all the little guys to come together and say, hey, we've had enough. This is bullshit. And that's all I got for you guys. Be safe. If you learned something, good. Share it with your friends. If you were offended, put a helmet on. Life's tough. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.